Welcome back to Hopeful Horizon, where we bring you stories that open minds, challenge perceptions, and inspire change. Today, we take you on a gripping journey of injustice, power, and redemption. It all starts with a teenager waiting for his friend in what should have been an ordinary afternoon. But in a world where prejudice lurks in unexpected places, one phone call turns his life upside down. What follows is a shocking confrontation, a reckoning, and a lesson in justice that no one saw coming. Stay with us as we unravel a powerful story about bias, accountability, and a mother's unwavering determination to protect her son. If you love stories with real impact and unexpected twists, be sure to comment below and let us know where you're listening from. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss another eye-opening story from Hopeful Horizon. The early evening sun cast a golden glow over the pristine, tree-lined streets of Westbrook Estates, an affluent neighborhood where manicured lawns stretched out before grand homes like velvet carpets. The air was thick with the scent of freshly cut grass and the distant hum of a lawnmower. Birds chirped lazily in the cooling air, their songs blending with the occasional bark of a dog. It was the kind of place where everything seemed picture perfect, unless, of course, you didn't look like you belonged. Jamal Carter shifted his weight from foot to foot, glancing at his phone for the time. He adjusted the straps of his backpack, heavy with textbooks, and sighed. His best friend Andrew had invited him over to study, but as usual, Andrew was running late. Jamal didn't mind waiting. He was used to it. He had spent most of his 16 years waiting, for buses, for his mom to get home from work, for the world to see him as more than just the color of his skin. But tonight, waiting would cost him more than just time. Across the street, behind the curtains of a sprawling colonial-style home, Karen Whitmore peered out with narrowed eyes. Her gaze locked onto Jamal, suspicion curling in her stomach like a coiled snake. A young black male, alone, standing on her street? Her fingers tightened around her phone. "She's been standing there for a while," she muttered, dialing 911. "Yes, I'd like to report a suspicious person in my neighborhood." A young black male, wearing dark clothes, carrying a backpack. He's just standing there, looking around, like he's casing houses. Jamal, oblivious to the eyes watching him, scrolled through his phone. He thought nothing of the passing patrol car until it suddenly stopped. The wailing of sirens cut through the tranquil evening like a knife. He barely had time to react before two uniformed officers burst from their cruiser, weapons drawn. "Get on the ground, now!" Jamal's heart slammed against his ribs. Panic surged through him like an electric current. His hands shot up instinctively. "Wait, I live here. I'm waiting for my friend." But the officers weren't listening. In a blur, one tackled him, forcing him onto the pavement. The impact knocked the wind from his lungs, his cheeks scraping against the rough concrete. A knee pressed into his back, heavy and unyielding. "Stop resisting," one of them barked. "I'm not," Jamal wheezed. "Please, just look at my ID." A few feet away, Karen watched with satisfaction from her window, nodding approvingly as the officers subdued the threat. In her mind, she had done the right thing. She had protected her neighborhood. One officer fished Jamal's wallet from his pocket, flipping it open. His expression shifted as he read the name on the ID. Carter. Wait. Simone Carter. Jamal, still pinned to the ground, clenched his jaw. "Yeah, she's my mom." The officers exchanged uneasy glances. The name was familiar, too familiar. Then, their radios crackled to life. "We have an FBI chief en route to your location. ETA 2 minutes. Silence fell over the scene. The officers tensed. Karen, still peering from her window, felt a sudden knot of unease form in her stomach. 2 minutes later, the balance of power would shift. The low hum of an approaching engine sent a ripple of tension through the street. A sleek black SUV rolled to a stop, the tinted windows reflecting the flashing red and blue lights. The doors opened in unison, and out stepped Simone Carter, chief of the FBI and Jamal's mother. Simone was the embodiment of authority, tall, poised, and dressed in a tailored navy suit that did nothing to soften the steel in her gaze. She strode forward with purpose, her heels clicking against the pavement like the ticking of a countdown. The officers stiffened. One instinctively adjusted his belt. The other swallowed hard. Karen, watching from her window, felt her smirk evaporate. This was not the reaction she had expected. "What's going on here?" Simone's voice was calm, but razor-sharp, the kind of voice that could slice through lies and excuses before they were even spoken. Jamal, still sitting on the pavement, looked up at his mother with a mixture of relief and humiliation. He had never been more grateful to see her, but he hated that he needed her right now. One officer cleared his throat. "Ma'am, we got a report of a suspicious individual." "Suspicious how?" Simone's eyes locked onto him, unblinking. "Well, he was standing here." "Standing," the officer faltered. "Looking around like he was what?" The words hung in the air like a guillotine. The officer hesitated. "We were just following protocol." Simone turned to her son. "Jamal, did they ask for your ID before tackling you?" Jamal shook his head. His voice was tight. "Number. They just..." He gestured to the scraped skin on his face. Simone's jaw tightened. She turned back to the officers. "Did you even ask my son a single question before shoving him to the ground?" Neither answered. "Badge numbers, now." The younger officer hesitated. "Ma'am, let's not make this a big..." "Oh, it's a big deal." Simone's voice sliced through the night air. "Because you just unlawfully detained the son of the highest-ranking FBI official in this state." The hush that followed was deafening. Karen, standing frozen in her doorway, felt her stomach drop. She had made a terrible mistake. But it was too late. Simone turned toward her. "You called the police on a teenager waiting for his friend?" Karen swallowed. I was just being cautious." Simone took a step forward. "Or were you just being racist?" Karen's face drained of color. The officers, sensing their fate, began to shift uncomfortably. A new set of flashing lights appeared at the end of the street. A second police vehicle pulled up, but this one carried the chief of police. He stepped out, his face already lined with stress. He saw Simone, and his expression fell. "Chief Carter," he said, rubbing his temple. Simone raised a hand. "Save it." She turned to the officers who had detained Jamal. "You two are suspended, effective immediately." The police chief sighed, but didn't argue. "She's right. Hand over your badges." The two officers hesitated before unclipping their badges and handing them over, their hands shaking slightly. Jamal watched in awe. His mother had just flipped the entire situation. The weight on his chest lightened. He wasn't powerless, and neither was his mother. But this wasn't over. Not yet. And the whole city was about to find out. Red and blue lights flash against the pristine houses as more police cars pull up, sirens wailing. Neighbors peek from behind curtains, their curiosity piqued by the commotion. The air is thick with tension, and every officer on scene knows this is no longer just a routine call. A black sedan screeches to a halt, and out steps Chief of Police Harold Lawson. His uniform is crisp, but a sheen of sweat glistens on his forehead. He immediately spots Simone Carter, standing firm with her arms crossed, her expression unreadable but lethal. His stomach drops. "Chief Carter," he says, his voice a mix of caution and forced authority. Simone holds up a hand, her glare freezing him mid-sentence. "Save it." Officer Daniels and Officer Reed, the two who tackled Jamal, stand stiffly, their faces pale. They exchange nervous glances, as if hoping this is just a bad dream. Simone takes a slow step toward them. "You two," she says, voice like ice, "did you even attempt to verify my son's identity before pinning him to the pavement?" Neither officer speaks. Their silence is deafening. The tension in the air is shattered by Karen Whitmore, who steps forward, feigning innocence. I was just trying to keep the neighborhood safe," she stammers. "I didn't know he was your son." Simone's gaze snaps to her, sharp as a blade. "So, if he weren't my son, this would be justified?" Karen's mouth opens and closes, but no words come out. Simone takes another step closer. "You called the police on a black teenager standing outside a house. You assumed he was a threat. And now, because of your assumption, my son was thrown to the ground like a criminal." Karen's face drains of color. I really thought, no, Simone interrupts. You assumed, and now your assumption could cost you. Karen's breaths come faster. Wait, what do you mean? Simone's expression remains cold. Filing a false police report is a crime, and in this case, it had consequences. Karen backs away, her lips quivering. The weight of what she's done finally sinks in. Without another word, she turns and scurries back into her house, slamming the door behind her. Simone turns back to the officers. You two are suspended, effective immediately. Officer Daniels swallows hard. Ma'am, please, we were just following protocol. No, Simone cuts in. You followed bias, and now you face the consequences. The chief of police exhales, rubbing his temples. He knows there's no way out of this. She's right, he mutters. Hand over your badges. Daniels and Reed hesitate, but under Simone's unrelenting gaze, they finally comply, unpinning their badges and handing them over with shaking hands. Jamal watches from the side, still shaken but in awe. His mother just flipped the entire situation in a matter of minutes. She turned his wrongful detainment into a reckoning. The crowd that had gathered murmurs, some filming on their phones. This moment will not be forgotten, and neither will the lesson learned today. The Carter household is quiet that evening. The earlier events still linger in the air like a storm that has passed, but left destruction in its wake. Jamal sits at the dinner table, pushing his food around his plate. Simone watches him carefully before speaking. Talk to me, she says softly. Jamal looks up, his eyes filled with something she hates to see, fear. Mom, does this happen a lot? Simone sighs, setting down her fork. More than you know. Jamal's jaw tightens. What if you hadn't been my mom? What if I didn't have connections? Simone's face hardens. Then you might have spent the night in jail. The truth is heavy. The air grows thick with unspoken words. Jamal finally whispers, "That's not fair." No, Simone agrees. It's not. A long silence stretches between them before Simone pulls out her phone and starts typing. Jamal frowns. What are you doing? Simone's eyes flicker with determination. Making sure this doesn't happen again. The next morning, the incident is everywhere. News outlets report the wrongful detainment of an FBI chief's son. The video of Simone putting the officers in their place goes viral, shared thousands of times across social media. The pressure mounts. By the end of the week, the officers are officially fired and charged with misconduct. Karen? Publicly exposed. Her face is plastered across the internet with the words, neighborhood watch or racial profiling. She deactivates her social media, avoiding reporters camped outside her home. The world now sees her for what she truly is. Meanwhile, Simone takes action. She meets with city officials, demanding new policies against racial profiling. She uses her position to push for accountability, for mandatory bias training, for reform. Jamal watches it all unfold, his admiration for his mother growing. But it's not just admiration, it's realization. One night, he knocks on Simone's office door. She looks up from her laptop. What's up? Jamal steps in, his shoulders squared. I want to be a lawyer. Simone's brows lift in surprise. Really? Jamal nods firmly. I want to fight for people who don't have an FBI chief for a mom. Simone smiles, warmth filling her eyes. Then you'll make one hell of a lawyer. Jamal grins, but there's a fire behind it, a purpose. Because this wasn't just about him anymore. This was about every black kid who'd been profiled, every innocent person wrongfully accused. One unjust arrest led to a movement, and Jamal Carter was just getting started. Thank you for joining us on this unforgettable journey of truth, justice, and standing up against injustice. Jamal's story is a reminder that sometimes one moment can expose a much bigger issue, and one person's courage can lead to real change. Have you ever witnessed or experienced a situation like this? Let us know in the comments and tell us where you're listening from. If you found this story meaningful, share it with others so more people can be part of the conversation. And don't forget, subscribe and tap the bell so you never miss another powerful story from Hopeful Horizon. Until next time, stay aware, stay strong, and always stand for what's right.